Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Game Theory Podcast. This is episode 47, side-scrolling beat 'em ups. That's what we're going to be talking about. That is what we're going to be talking about because that's kind of what we did a little bit.
Yes, we side scroll and we beat things up.
Yes, we do love it. But yeah, just as an aside, guys, thanks for bearing with us for our schedules. As far as planning episodes and things go, it's been so chaotic over the summer. This is not normal. We did a full year of we knew what we were going to do. Everything went according to plan. But then
Everything went exactly as we had foreseen.
Yep. But then this summer, just everything went to shite. Went to shite real quick.
Went to shite a lot. Yeah. We it's hard. It's hard to do a podcast on the go. For instance, this next week, I'm going to be in a mountain in the middle of the woods the entire week when I'm not driving in a car full of children to get there.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, anyway, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Side-scrolling beat 'em ups. You'll see why that's cool.
That sounded out of context. Let me put some background there. I'm going to a family reunion. This isn't anything creepy.
I'm going to be in a car full of screaming children, and then when I get there, I'm going to be locked away in a mountain for 4 days. And then there'll be an investigation, so I better lay low.
I'm stay off the radar.
That's awesome. Yes. So are you still in, Mountain Home right now or something?
No, I'm in Bentonville now, so northwest Arkansas, visiting my sister as we plan everything for the road trip out to Arizona, where I'll be for a while, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, I won't be back at Tule Castle, David, until Sunday night.
Sunday. Okay, so, yeah, I guess we'll discuss more of that later. But let me see. Anything else weird and not going to be covered by the news going on? I don't think so.
No, everything's fine now. How are you?
How are you now? We're fine here now. How are you? All right, good. Then I guess let's move into recent news. All right, this is the recent news. Recent news, things that's been going on in the headlines, things we have noticed about gaming and other things, but mostly gaming. So, have you noticed anything in the news?
Well, our Facebook group had an article recently about a Lady Thor.
Lady Thor, yeah, I threw that up there. Pretty weird.
Now,
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I first saw it, and my first thought was Norse mythology. Loki, he's a shapeshifter. He tends to be a lady from time to time. In fact, as a horse, a female horse, he gave birth to the six-legged steed of, I think, Thor.
Oh, yeah, doesn't Odin ride that sometimes?
Yeah, I forget. My Norse mythology is not awesome, but I do remember a gender-bending bestiality episode with Loki, so my first thought was, okay, so Thor turns into a lady, but that seems to not be the case, so what's going on with that?
Those things do tend to stand out a little bit. Gender-bending bestiality.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Girl Thor, I don't know, it hasn't really been released exactly what it's going to be talking about. This is all released slipped by Whoopi Goldberg, of all people. She was on The View, and she was like, oh, well, I don't remember exactly her quote, but basically she let it slip by saying, well, Thor's going to be back, but he's doing it a little different this time. He's going to be a woman. And people are like, wait, what? Why would Whoopi Goldberg know about this? Why would she be talking about it on The View? Shouldn't this be a marketing thing? And it just went viral like crazy. So that's two things about that seem pretty weird. First of all, Girl Thor, not Valkyrie, who's actually in the canon, but Girl Thor, it's going to be a female Thor who's, wielding Mjolnir and all that.
Yeah, apparently he's Mjolnir, the hammer.
Yes.
Can only be wielded by one worthy and virtuous and, worthy of the hammer. And apparently Thor is going to lose that mantle for some reason. It's going to pass on to a lady. I think it's how they're going to do it, so... Yeah.
That's so weird. But good. I mean, there needs to be... They've been trying to get a Wonder Woman thing out for a while, but she's kind of weird, her backstory. So
yeah, lots of bondage with Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I don't know why. Okay, so why can't they just do like they did with... what was that storyline? Was it the Planet Hulk or... Anyway, they just showed her it's really Athenian. She's off on this little, island basically with her sisters.
Yeah, Themyscira.
Yeah, and that seemed pretty cool because they stand around and they look awesome and they're fighting. Everything is cool. I was like, oh yeah, this is something everyone could get behind. But yep, nope, that's weird. They went straight to Thor, which is weird because that's one of their better selling franchises.
Yeah, now it is after the Avengers and the Thor movies. But I thought it was funny. There was a comment on The Onion. Some guy was like, finally, It really says a lot about America that we're finally ready to accept a beautiful Scandinavian blonde woman, blonde white woman.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not really breaking new ground. Plus, okay, I'm going to call this right now. I'm going to go ahead and call this. Pretty sure I know what's going to happen. They're going to, script someone who's pretty, and then people are going to comment how she's beautiful, and then feminists are going to get upset because of the fact that we're commenting on that she's beautiful. But I'd like to just go ahead and bookmark right here all the discussion that goes on about Chris Hemsworth and how beautiful he is as a man. And like, I know a lot of like mom circles, and they just like circle jerk each other about this all day. So I don't want to hear it when it comes
to do as a mom circle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if she's beautiful, so what? As long as she's a BA, if she's out there, cracking faces with a Mjolnir, then good. But I just want to point that out right here. I want to earmark this episode 47. You guys heard it here. They will bitch because she's pretty, and people are going to say that she's pretty. Just wait. So annoying. No win condition.
Of breaking new ground with Marvel, did you hear about Captain America?
Yes. Yeah. What's happening with him?
He is going to be replaced with a black Captain America, African American.
Well, the problem is once you go black, you never go back, and I'm afraid I'd like to have. No, I really like that character actually. Or not the character, that actor.
Yeah.
Chris Evans, I believe.
Yeah, no, he's great.
Yeah,
but,
he's good.
Yeah, I think Falcon might be taking over his job. They were talking about replacing Falcon with Stephen Colbert on the Colbert Show. So
really,
lots of mix-ups. Yeah, they were joking, but they had Joe Quesada, the kind of head of Marvel's writing department, on there, and they were talking about, and Stephen was like, so you're saying there's an opening for Falcon now? He's like, actually, we had our artists already do some concept art, and they pulled out this picture of Stephen Colbert dressed in a Falcon suit flying with like an American eagle in the background. So
he's already got the shield in his show.
And Colbert is ripped, so he's already ready for it, according to that concept art.
Yeah, right.
He's been keeping the shape.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now, you linked me something a while back. I think it was early on in the week, and it was about a Wii U horror game.
Yes, that is. So far, there's no release date in America, but it's coming out in Japan. What was the name of that game?
Oh man, you put me on the spot. This was like early on in the game. Let me click here. We got it in our notes here. It's called.
Oh yeah, Fatal Frame.
Fatal Frame, yeah.
The black-haired shrine maiden. So what do you think of that? Did you watch the trailer?
No, I didn't actually. I never saw the first Fatal Frame or played the first Fatal Frame game, and I'm really weird about spoilers. So I was like, oh, you know what? No, I'm not gonna do that. Remember, wasn't that released on what was it like? Was it the PlayStation 1, where you take pictures of ghosts?
Yeah, this one looks like a classic like Japanese horror film. Like Japanese horror has its own kind of flavor, like The Ring, or they've got these kind of very ghost-heavy horror movies.
Yeah.
They even kind of spoofed on that in Cabin in the Woods. Remember, they had like the Japanese horror movie that they were doing with the schoolgirls and the demon that they summoned?
Yeah.
So this definitely has the feel of a Japanese horror movie. Lots of just random ghosts appearing and disappearing and creepy things happening and suicides. And looks pretty, I don't know. It's people who watch a lot of horror, there's a big difference between Western and Eastern horror.
It's mostly just schoolgirls, or?
No, like The Ring was a remake of a Japanese horror movie, and that has a Japanese kind of feel to it, compared to like an American horror movie, which is more like a gory, I guess, more like a Chainsaw Massacre or a, I can't think of any other horror movies.
Like Jason or.
Like it seems like Westerners tend to go more for just like the carnage, and Japanese go for more the weird, like paranormal stuff.
It's really two aspects that make up a horror. Well, maybe I should say this for the horror episode, but Stephen King talked about this or talked to the director of The Mist about this, about how he creates the stories and why they're scary, even though his monsters are stupid, like a clown and stuff, or like tiny bald guys inside of lab coats on Insomnia, and in The Mist, it's just like a mist with like a unknowable monster inside. It's weird, right? But they're still scary, and like he's like kind of mastered this idea of how to make something scary. So there's two parts of it. There's like the build up. And then there's the reveal, and Western seems to really like focus on the reveal and then the post reveal, which isn't as successful. And then and it sounds like the Japanese are really doing the build up thing, where they'll catch little glimpses and it's unpredictable, and then you never, I don't know.
Yeah.
The showdown doesn't really happen as quickly, I think.
So check out that. For those of you who aren't weird about spoilers, check out that YouTube video of the Fatal Frame, the black-haired Shrine Maiden. There's a trailer out for it. It's all in Japanese, so you can't really tell what's happening, but it definitely has that kind of Eastern horror movie vibe to it.
Well, before I go a little nuts about something that was in the news as far as like psychology and research goes, we talk about the Oculus Rift and the fact that they're causing a little bit of stir in both the Xbox and the PlayStation kind of communities. Nintendo seemed to be pretty quiet about this, but Sony and Xbox were a little concerned because Oculus Rift is making a motion controller, and they got a little butthurt about that because they were like, wait, the Kinect and the the motion something, I forget what the other one's called, but or the two, their little Wii remotes basically that they came out with. They've got almost like no support, so they're like fighting for this second place horribly. And then Oculus Rift was like, "Oh, we'll take some of that." So
wait, so Nintendo, who did the Wii mode, they're just like, "Yeah, whatever, fine," and everyone else is just freaking out about it.
Yeah, it seems that way. Yeah, I mean, it could just be because Nintendo has bad PR and they don't really release a whole lot, but I don't think they're worried.
Bad PR is good PR sometimes.
Right. But
so,
I think it'll be pretty cool, especially as far as like immersion goes, right? Like imagine if you've got a Wii controller but you can't see it in your hand, because all you see is like 360 degrees of something else. And so as you're moving your hand, let's say you're holding a sword, you're actually holding a remote. But I feel like that'll help push into the immersion if you've got that remote in your hand and you're swinging it, and
like imagine Skyward Sword on Oculus.
Right, yeah. Or take that motion controller and then put like a little a magazine and then a holster or a hand hold on it, so like a grip, so like a gun, and then man, you got yourself an awesome RP or FPS then. So that'd be sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty excited about that. I'd love to see that come out. Oculus Rift is like, everyone's watching that, so every little bit of news comes out. So the fact that they're working on a motion controller seems pretty cool, considering that their whole shtick is about immersion.
I wonder if in 50 years we're gonna look back at the Oculus Rift the way we look at Atari now and be like, oh, that was cute. What a pioneer into an industry. That really opened some doors.
Yeah, probably kind of like the Virtual Boy.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be more successful in that. But you know how like the Atari like was like, okay guys, video game systems in your home now. This is crazy. And now it looks super primitive. Like it feels like that's what's gonna be with the Oculus Rift, where it's like virtual reality, and then we're gonna look back at that and laugh later. But it was an important step at the time.
Yeah. I think you're right, yeah, because it seems like that's where everybody, even like the gaming companies, are kind of keeping up with Oculus Rift right now, so I'm sure they're going to keep that in mind when it comes to development. But speaking of getting in your brain, I should hashtag this one, hashtag psychology rant, so I'm sorry about this, but there's this, have you ever heard of deep brain stimulation? What do you know about that?
It's where they slice open your skull and they just massage your brain tissue for a while, get a nice, relaxing... No, I don't know. What is deep brain stimulation?
You get that on you go to a Thai retreat.
Yeah.
Just
it's really
slice
good.
it open.
They light your chest on fire and give you a little chop, chop, chop.
It's great.
It's pretty intense, but it's relaxing.
No, deep brain stimulation is where you take two electrodes and you just shove them down in your cranium, like through holes, into your brain, and you shove them down past like kind of your cerebral cortex down in deep brain, like in towards the middle, and you shock the shit out of it. Now, thing is like the electrodes, they're insulated all to the very end, so like it's not like it's shocking everything it's touching, but it is slicing straight through your brain matter into into the middle of your brain, and then they turn it on and electrocute you. And when they do it, what they have to do is they actually have to
wait, why are we doing this?
This is what I'm talking about. This whole like obsession of like hardware versus software, and the fact that like people are really stuck on the myth that you can't change your hardware. Like it's that whole computer analogy that just kills us, because that's what you do with the computers. You jumpstart it, right? I literally did that with my computer whenever it was having problems with my my PSU, my power supply unit. Jump started it by just putting power directly into the motherboard. So that's kind of what they're doing here, is they shock the shit out of it, and what it does is it overloads. I won't get into neuroscience right now, but basically you have, how far should I get? You have potentials that happen in your brain, and like they can happen with neurons, and they can be either primed or they can be sort of like inhibited. But basically this kind of like resets all that, and it's also just a fucking crazy thing to do, because like with electroconvulsive therapy for example, they have to like numb your entire body with general anesthesia, kind of like you're going in for like a surgery, and except they leave just your leg or like your foot. They tie it off so that the blood doesn't flow down there. That way the drugs can't get down to your foot, so that they can see your foot flex. That way they know that the electricity is on, and then they turn it back off, and when it stops. But because if they don't numb your whole body, you actually like break your arms and legs as you convulse. So like, and this ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, is like some people actually like try to prescribe this for depression, and the same thing with this deep brain stimulation. It's just for me, it's like barbaric. I'm like, we did that in like the 20s or the 30s. We shouldn't really still be doing that. Like,
yeah.
I'm not a fan of medication, but if you absolutely will not go to therapy, go get medication. Don't get this.
Yeah, BYU used to do this with back in the 70s. They used to do it with homosexuals. They would they'd attach diodes to their genitals, and they'd show them gay pornography and try and like shock them every time they got an erection. It was not successful. A lot of people committed suicide after that.
Yeah, that's freaking horrible. Well,
not good psychology.
Yeah, so now people are kind of doing this kind of thing with people with OCD. So what they do is they get the people who are the very worst, and they call them non-responders to medication. So like, they take medication and nothing happens. OCD has a little bit better of a response rate with SSRIs. So with that whole class of reuptake inhibitors. So that's a little better than like depression, which has like relatively none, if any at all. But anyway, what this does is they shove it down there and they hit the juice, and you start freaking out. Basically, it like wipes you, and then what it does is this is how they reported this, and this is what pisses me off. They said it releases dopamine into your brain. Now that pisses me off because there are a lot of dopaminergic systems in your brain. One of which has to do with Parkinson's, like your caudate nucleus, like your motor functions. Another one has to do with your nucleus accumbens, so like that. Your reward center, and that's what most people think of when they hear dopamine. They're like, oh, dopamine, so it makes you happy. And I'm like, well, only if it depends on where it's getting released. That's like saying, I had water move in my body, therefore I ran faster. I'm like, well, what do you mean water? I mean, which system are we talking about? Are we talking about your bladder, in which case you'd be pissing? Are you talking about sweat? Or are you talking about just the like blood, the water, the viscosity of that, like pumping stuff through? What are you talking about? Releases dopamine? Like that's like saying moving water in your body. There's all kinds of different systems. So anyway, that was reported that way. That's what pisses me off in the abstract. And I was like, releases dope? Of course it does. It released all it just fries it. And everything gets their action potentials hit because you basically have like a well, I guess I won't get into this. Anyway, the point is it fires everything off, so everything releases like crazy in your brain. That's why you have like an oversurge of activity, and then it just resets back to nothing as you reuptake all your neurotransmitters. But anyway, it's not good for you. But they just started saying that maybe an OCD could happen. Anyway, didn't like that. Was not a fan. Decided I'd bring that up. Hopefully that'll help people who read these studies. Like I think this was on I Love Science or whatever, one of those Facebook posts that's trying to like get people informed of science. And so I just got really pissed about it. Anyway.
Not great. Not bueno.
Not great, yeah. Just everybody put on your critical hats whenever you hear crap like this. And it's not just, like neuroscience and stuff too. We're doing this as well, like in psychology. Like there was just something released that says like, hey, we found, like a study, we found that, this is the quote, we found that sleep quality was more strongly associated with physical activity 1 year later than was having a diagnosis of PTSD. So in other words, your sleep quality was strongly associated with physical activity. No shit, right? Right. And which direction, it didn't say, but it's just because they didn't analyze. They just did, well, it looks like you're correlated. So either because you do a lot of rigorous activity, you sleep better, or maybe because you don't sleep so well, you're kind of tired and you don't do a lot of physical activity. No shit. And that's more strongly associated than having a diagnosis of PTSD? No shit. Like, why is that a reportable finding? Like, what that was is probably what the researcher did. It was a hypothesis. And they said,
oh, yeah.
PTSD affects it better, more than physical activity, and it didn't turn out that way. And then so they unethically changed their hypothesis. This is why there's a movement for like having to register your hypothesis before you do your research, is because of shit like this. So psychology does this too. All sciences do this.
I know. I saw a psychology study the other day, and it said the headline was non-religious children are better able to tell facts from fiction. And what they did was they took a bunch of kids and they told them a bunch of fairy tales, like Rapunzel, like Rumpelstiltskin, Jack and the Beanstalk, and they told them a bunch of stories from the Old Testament. And what they found was that kids from a religious background, like who go to church or in parochial schools, they are less able to tell like the Old Testament characters. Like the non-religious kids go, oh yeah, those are fairy tales, and the religious kids are like, oh no, those are real, which is like, okay, whatever. And then they also found that the religious kids were less able to tell the Jack and the Beanstalk, fairy tale characters from being fantasy or real. So it'd be like, oh yeah, Jack and the Beanstalk, that's real too. And the headline basically read like, children raised to believe that magic is real, less able to determine whether or not magic is real. I'm like, oh, no shit, like that's not even why are we doing this as a study?
Yeah, that's really weird. That sounds like maybe some shitty graduate student who had no idea what they wanted to do or something and just like made a shitty study. That's really stupid. You have to control for other shit when you do stuff like that. That's what upsets me in general. Sloppy science.
Mm-hmm. So and then even when they like finagle the data, it just turns out to be like a no duh headline. Like heavy objects are harder to lift. Science proves.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm sure there was a whole line of literature that already showed that. Appreciate that though.
Children raised to believe in fairy tales, more likely to believe in fairy tales.
Well, yeah, I mean, and when your subset of like, of socially approved like history, like so right now, what if we found out that there was no George Washington, right? Something like that. That would be like, whoa, that's pretty weird. But like so if our history it dictates how we or our knowledge of history or our understanding or our belief of history, I should say, because we're not sure, is dictates what you find as believable in the future, of course. So like, yeah, if somewhere in the past they were like, oh, George Washington also had a leprechaun, and that leprechaun used to find him, pots of gold, and we believed that, and everyone around us told us that's the case, of course we'd believe something along those lines. Once that, that magical kind of idea has been introduced and said, yeah, that's a real thing, of course. It's like people who believe in witchcraft, or a lot of people who are religious believe in witchcraft, like they're, see if someone can, be a witch or whatever, because in the Bible it talks about, witches a lot. So
the witches of Dagobah.
Dagobah?
Yeah, that's in the Bible. Dagobah, there was a witch at Dagobah.
Awesome. It was probably talking about Yoda, I think, but
yeah, I think it was a bit of translation there. It's definitely Yoda on Dagobah.
Awesome.
So anyway, back to gaming news. There's new Smash Brothers characters announcements. Did you see the announcement for that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sweet. So it's the latest Fire Emblem Awakening, which is a great game. They just got 2 characters announced for it. So you have Lucina and you have Robin, which is actually an interesting choice because that's the player you play as the main character.
Uh-huh.
So it's like the super customizable character. Like you can make it male, female, any age, any hair color. So I was like, that's a strange choice for a playable character on Smash Brothers because it kind of limits your options. But you can play as the male or female version of Robin, and you can play as and he's using tomes and stuff. And it looks like they're using that Fire Emblem mechanic. The more often you use the tomes, like they break and you can't use them anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of a resource you have to manage. So that looks really interesting. And also, we found Lucina fighting against a force that she could not even contain. She's like, what power? What magnificent power! And the flames die out, and you see standing in the smoldering ruins of what was once an arena, Captain Falcon.
It was awesome. Oh man, I love that guy. I knew he was gonna make it. I think everyone did, but it's awesome. So whenever you're revealing characters and everyone knows the character's gonna be in there, you might as well make it classy, which they did, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, they always reveal Falcon in like this overwhelming power kind of scene. He's like, Falcon, boy! He's about to cream Lucina, and then like it's great.
Amazing.
It's like they're trolling us. Like Falcon was bottom tier in Smash Brothers Brawl. They made him seem like this overwhelming powerhouse in the trailer. So either A, they buffed him, or B, they're just laughing at us.
Yeah. Oh man, but that'll be good. I'm excited about playing Falcon, seeing if they changed him any, especially if they buffed him. That'd be great. I just want him to be average because in the old ones he was really good, and in the newest one he's crap.
Yeah, but I think they realized that his speed was a huge issue. He was so fast, and no one could escape his grab. So in the latest one, they introduced that slip mechanic where people would trip if they were too fast. Yeah. He just became a joke after that. So hopefully they tone that down a little bit.
It's pretty horrible. Pretty horrible. But other than that, not a whole lot in the news, I don't think. There's a Humble Bundle, or there's a Humble Bundle sale right now on Ubisoft, which Ubisoft is a great company. So you should head over there and check that out if you guys get a chance. I think it's just humblebundle.com. And then they've got that's like South Park, Stick of Truth for those people who are fans of that. Child of Light, Splinter Cell, Far Cry 3, Assassin's Creed, all those things. So you should head over there. Plus, there's a silly little game called Call of Juarez Gunslinger, which I had a lot of fun with. I don't think you did, David. Did you?
No.
Yeah. So it's kind of a pure FPS with like a Western kind of feel. I loved it. I thought it was great. Good storytelling. A lot of fun. Gets a little weird at the end, but still, it's a solid game, I think. But
yeah,
David did not like it.
the newest Tomb Raider was on sale for $5. That might still be going on, so check Steam for that.
That'd be good. So anyway, that's just our chance to save you guys money in your hobby, and hopefully that helps someone out. Ubisoft makes great games, so yeah.
And we also have our D20 Radio Network podcast recommendation of the week. So this week, I was looking at a podcast called Geeks Menagerie, and it's kind of a all things geek related show, and they do a lot of RPG talk. And I listened to an episode about the role-playing game Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles After the Bomb. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay, so it's like a role-playing game set in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe where you play mutants. So it's kind of like that old school kind of Kevin Laird and Peter, I forget the names, but the old Ninja Turtle comics, kind of that vibe. Yeah. So, any role-playing game fans out there who want to do something kind of silly, like play an anthropomorphic ninja eagle, that's the system for you. And so they kind of go through that. So you can check that out and other shows at d20radio.com.
Amazing. Well, good. Yeah, we're proud to be part of the D20 network, and I've been listening to a lot of their podcasts recently. Not a lot of theirs, a lot of Order 66. I only became a fan probably in the last, I don't know, few months, probably, as we got bigger into the Star Wars Edge of the Empire campaigns. Because before that, I'd heard of them and I'd listened to them a couple times, but I was so busy with other games and other podcasts, I just kind of let them fall off. But now I'm going back and listening to some of their episodes and their most recent episodes. They're pretty good, especially the most recent one where they talk about that new Hired Gun book that's coming out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're talking with one of the guys who made it, and it's really good. But anyway, it's fun to hear his thoughts on things and his ideas. But yeah, if you guys are curious about that at all, and if any of you play Edge of the Empire, you may want to listen to that newest one. It's really good. But anyway, well, good. Let's move on to gaming experiences. All right, this is the section called Gaming Experiences, where we talk about the games we've played. What have you been playing, David? You've been kind of all over the place, right, recently.
Well, Tim let me play South Park Stick of Truth on his laptop, so it was pretty fun. It's basically plays like an episode of South Park. The premise is you're the new kid in town, and Cartman, the Grand Wizard Cartman, recruits you into his army. They're playing kind of a LARPing thing where all the kids in the neighborhood are either elves or humans, and they're at war. And so it kind of has that kind of make-believe quality where it's like a turn-based role-playing game, but you're using wooden swords and Velcro armor and just whatever you could find lying around. Right. So it's pretty funny. Definitely has that South Park humor for those of you I don't know, do you like South Park? I remember when we were kids, I did not care for South Park at all. It was just a bunch of fart jokes and just seemed really dumb. Yeah. And but recently, I went back to it the later seasons, and it's pretty funny. Lots of satire and stuff that's going on in pop culture.
Yeah, I think they matured a lot. It's kind of like I was gonna say Family Guy, but I'm not sure. Maybe it is like Family Guy because the first season was not good, if I remember right. But it was a lot of slapstick humor, a lot of in-your-face humor. I like Family Guy a lot, but I feel like a lot of people refine themselves as they move forward and they realize what their strengths are. Their strengths weren't poop jokes and I mean they still have those, of course, but they highlight satire exactly, or modern kind of things we're obsessed about right now, and they make them funny.
Yeah,
so nothing is sacred.
Does that. Yeah, they kind of do that thing where they take things that are unacceptable to joke about and they joke about them. So and some they still have their fart jokes, but they also have the classes. You can be a warrior, a mage, a rogue, or a Jew. And if you choose Jew as your starting class, Carmen's oh, cool. I thought we could have been friends, but I guess not. He's just super anti-Semitic. But yeah, there's just a lot of jokes like that that are kind of fun. So if you're a fan of South Park and you like RPGs, this is a game to pick up, especially if it's on sale right now with the Humble Bundle.
Yeah, it's funny. I read a lot of reviews and people were like, "Oh man, you'll laugh," and I was like, "I don't know." But then I played it and I laughed a lot. So it's very clever, little jokes and whenever you enter your name, it was like, "So Nougat, what's your name?" And I was like, "Oh, Solo." Typed in SOLO. That's my gaming tag. And I was like, "Solo." Click. And he's like, "Say that again. You sure you want your name to be this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess so, Solo." So I hit A again. He goes, or no, he says, he says, douchebag. You want your name to be douchebag? And you're like, no.
No.
You click no, and then he's like, okay, douchebag. And then, it's just funny, like, because he's Cartman. He's just a jerk.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway, whatever. A lot of little clever things that should probably keep you laughing. But yeah, what else? We played some Scott Pilgrim, right?
Yeah, we played some Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. That's a game I got you for your birthday several years ago, and I was like, do you still have that game? Let's go back to it.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah, that game, man. That game and that movie, or that show were awesome. I never read the manga.
Yeah.
Did you?
No, me either. But my first exposure to it was the movie, so I guess I'm a poser. But it's a ton of nostalgia, a ton of throwbacks to like Mega Man and Mario and Zelda. Like, if you're someone in our generation who grew up with those old video games, there's tons of things in both the movie and the game that you'll laugh at.
Yeah. Plus, if you have a really weird sense of humor, like in the game, like vegans have superpowers,
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like,
I'm not afraid to hit a girl. What?
Yeah. It's awesome.
He just punches her right in the face, and he's like, "What? I'm not afraid to hit a girl. I'm a rock star."
And that one where it's a weird sense of humor. Like, there's one where it says like they face off against this one of the ex-girlfriends, or one of the exes who's a girl. And she's like, get one step closer, and this will spell the end of your doom, or something like that. And he goes, what? What is that? Where did you even get that from? Or he says, yeah, what the cheesy line is that? What's that from? And she goes, my brain. And then she attacks. And, like, it's just weird, random, like, I don't know, humor like that. It's funny.
Yeah. Kind of the hipster movie of the year when it came out.
I don't know why I bother even telling the jokes, because I'm not gonna be funny when I tell them. What am I doing? Just watch it. It's funny.
Yeah, and play the game. It's a classic beat 'em up. We'll go more into the main analysis of why beat 'em ups are fun, but this one introduces RPG elements like River City Ransom does. It really feels like the acme of beat 'em ups, where it refines everything River City Ransom did and brings back all the great sprites. And just,
oh my gosh, I loved River City Ransom when I was a kid, and also just recently when I was in Iraq, I got an emulator and I played with one of my friends, King. We played forever, and he found some like disgusting mix. I don't know how he found this. Some disgusting mix of stats where he could not be killed, and like I kept throwing him down and stuff. Because in that game you could fight each other.
Yeah.
And it would always break down like that because you're fighting. It's other things. You're fighting, and then they hit you, and you're like stop, and they hit you again. And you're like dude stop, and they hit you again. Like on accident. But eventually you're like okay now I need to hit you for 20 health because. I don't know, making it even. I don't know.
To make it fair.
Yeah, you hit him a couple times and you're like, stop, that was an accident, but yours was on purpose. Now I need to get even. So 2 punches on purpose. And anyway, we just started pretty soon you just throw down any semblance of a like friendship and just destroy each other. And that's what we did. But he got some kind of like disgusting mix of stats. Like, you just run to the little stores and buy stuff. He got some kind of mix of stats that made him just invincible. I kept throwing him down, picking him up, throwing him, picking him up, and throwing him, off the ground because like there's no defense against that. He actually goes, I'm going to get up and go get something to drink. You tell me when you're done, so I'm going to get up and kick your ass. And I was like, whatever, dude. So I'm picking him and throwing him. But he has no health, and he still won't die. So when he comes back, he sits down, opens his Coke, and then I let him get up, and he just punched me like 3 times, and I died.
That's like Tim in our Scott Pilgrim thing. He was playing stills. And he came in like halfway through the game, so we're like, okay, we'll give him all the gold so he can level up a little bit. And he just put everything to strength. He had the best glutes in the land.
Best glutes in the land. The box squats, man.
Just doing all the box squats. He was unstoppable. He was like, come at me, bro.
Come at me, bro. But we can get more into that, I guess, in the next part. Oh, well, I gotta sneeze.
And now you're sneezing. Is it going to happen? Is the sneeze going to happen? Or is it a tea sneeze?
Sorry, but I didn't realize my mic was still muted. I was actually talking that whole time.
I thought you were just doing one of those like almost sneezes. I was like, this is a lot of suspense for the audience. They don't know if it's going to happen or not.
No, I'm sitting there talking. I'll say everything I said again, but this time to you guys. So Far Cry 3 has been kind of a side project or a back burner game, those ones that you kind of you double click on whenever you beat your current project or current game. Mm-hmm. Well, I got back into it, and ever since you guys left, I've been playing it a decent amount when I'm not playing Bravely Default. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I beat it, and it is weird, but also really kind of fun. It does the whole growth thing, the questing, like getting better and better until, and then there's kind of a cheesy parts. I don't know. There's a lot of like spiritualism in it, and a lot of drugs. Like you take drugs and you go on little journeys, and then the journeys are supposed to teach you something. It's
Sure.
really weird.
As drugs do.
As drugs do.
It's like those 80s arcade games. Winners don't use drugs.
Well, first it's really cool because like the first you kill like some little mini boss or some dude who's important, right? Because you take this drug and you kind of like wake up and you're all like, oh, what am I doing? And you're kind of stumbling around, and then the enemy comes up, and then it looks like it's just an illusion, but you fight it, and then when you come out of it, you look down, he's actually dead. So you're like, oh my god, I actually fought that guy. Oh, he chased me into the cave or whatever, whatever it was. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool that they did that, And then, but then they start doing it all the time, and you're not even taking drugs. You just fight bosses like that. Like everyone else disappears, and you just play this little mini game. And then when you come to, everyone in the room's dead. It happens like 6 times. It's really weird, and I do not like it. I think it's kind of dumb. Plus, like it's just drawn out because when you take a drug, you kind of stumble slowly. So you just do one of these stumble things down a long corridor as they do little movies to the left and right of you, trying to show you something. It's overdone. But the game in and of itself is still pretty fun. It's got that whole retaking of an island kind of, and you on this hero's journey to become. You go from douchebag to hero. So you show up with one of those Spring Break Bros, and like just the super douchiest guy with like your mom's like trust fund. You're just the worst. You're the worst. Hiring like local prostitutes and stuff. You're just you're horrible. And you go from that to like this kind of guy who's fighting for something better than himself. So it's pretty cool.
That's good. And you still been playing? You still been playing Bravely Default too?
Oh yeah, that game is fun. Although I didn't play it much whenever we were traveling around because Elijah wanted the DS, so I took Bravely Default out so that he couldn't possibly mess up anything, and let him play his Pokemon game. But
nice. And I've been playing. There's a new iOS app called Guardians of the Galaxy: The Ultimate Weapon.
Really? What's it like?
It's like another game. I can't remember the name of it, but I have it on my phone. But basically, you're a bunch of people out there, and you drag your guy to attack somebody. It's kind of like managing your party, right? So you have like a guy who's like a grunt. He'll go out and take the hits. Person's a healer. So you got your holy trinity of like healer, damage dealer, range damage dealer, DPS, like tank. And you just drag them on the bad guys, kill the bad guys. Kill the bad guys, you level up, get stronger, buy new gear, go to new level, do it again.
Huh.
So it's got that weirdly addictive RPG thing going on.
Okay, yeah.
So it's pretty fun. No in-app purchases. You just pay your $4 at the door and you play the game, which is how I prefer to do, phone games.
Yeah, that kind of operates on a little bit different of a mechanic than the side-scroller beat 'em up that we're going to be talking about. I guess I can talk about that more, but we'd have to wait till in-depth analysis. But
what are we waiting for?
What are we waiting for? Let's fucking do it!
Let's do it!
In-depth analysis, bitches! All right, this is the in-depth analysis. For anyone just now joining us, this is a 2-part series, and we just do that because some people complain about length. Don't they always complain about length? All right,
it's a common complaint in my experience.
That was a dick joke, guys.
That was an innuendo. It had 2 meanings.
Have you seen that? Anyway, sorry. This episode is about side-scrolling beat-em-ups, and we're gonna be talking about like what's going on there and that kind of thing. But have you seen that Kristen Bell? Are you familiar with Kristen Bell?
Yeah, she loves sloths.
She loves sloths. She's also the voice of not Elsa, but Anna. Anna. Yeah, from Frozen. Frozen changed my life. Frozen changed my life.
And also known from Veronica Mars and Heroes.
Heroes. That's where that was the first time I'd ever seen her. She was that daughter who was crazy.
The electric one.
Yeah, electric. But she's got some video on Funny or Die where she's like a super wholesome person. She's like, my greatest dream has always been to be a Disney princess. And like she's like, I took singing lessons growing up so I could bring joy to the world.
I cry when I'm around sloths because I'm so excited.
Yeah. This girl probably has no evil bone in her body. So Funny or Die kind of did it, kind of like that Natalie Portman thing where Natalie Portman did the rap. This is kind of like that where it's like it shows. She goes, oh, there's a little trade secret because they were like, hey, how was the filming of your new movie? And she's like, well, it was long days. It took a long while to get things done. Little trade secret you guys probably don't know about me, but I'll let it out here. I do about 8 hours of makeup every day to cover up all my ink. And they're like, I'm sorry? She goes, oh, I've got a lot of tattoos. And then like it shows her, and like she's got all these just horrible tattoos. It's like, anyway, one she got like like a like a tough tattoos. A couple of them are like just crappy '90s tattoos, like a troll and a gummy bear and stuff like that. But one in particular, like she goes, oh, in this one she pulls up her chin and it says "insert gear here," and then she goes, "insert gear here." She looks back down, and lets it sit for a while, and she goes, "That's a dick joke," and then like it kept going. But it's just that's why I brought that in just now. That's a pretty funny video. Yeah, yeah. So they just have to basically like put makeup all over her body before she can do any scenes. That's the big joke. That's the big joke, folks. And now you have it here in your podcast ears.
Okay. Well, so beat 'em up games. What is what is a beat 'em up game? Like, how would you define that?
Oh man, like just senseless.
Let me refine it. A beat 'em up side scroller, because you got your God of Wars and your Dante's.
And your Punch Out.
Yep. He beats people up.
I love Punch Out, man.
Side-scrolling beat 'em up game. What are the main elements of one?
So basically, you've got like a redundant mechanic, which is basically just like limited move set, right? Like,
yeah, like a punch, a kick, maybe a jump kick, a throw, perhaps.
Sometimes a block or a throw, and then anything else in between. There's no real emphasis on like any other. You don't really level up moves per se usually. That kind of thing.
Sometimes there will be like a special move that maybe takes some of your life to use.
Yeah, right. Like X-Men, the arcade game, for example. Yeah, so that's, I think, part of the mechanic. Also, I think there's usually items, like a level up, like health items occasionally. Sometimes
Pizza
there's like
time.
Pizza time, yeah. Or like the little flies and Battletoads. Remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, shoot your tongue out and grab them automatically. And you're like, sorry, dude. Didn't mean to grab that one.
I love those flies. But that was so stupid because your character would freeze when you did it. So if you're jumping over a pit and you're like, oh, fly, and you hit the button, your character would just go into this like straight, like he went catatonic all of a sudden. He's just like, and
oh yeah, the laws of physics would stop, and like your forward momentum would just hit a wall and you'd fall to your death, like Chris Hemsway's character on Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah. I don't know why. My son is screaming at the top of his lungs occasionally, so I might have to go tell him to stop. I don't know what's going on there.
Might have to just put him in a sleeper hole, choke him out.
Yeah, put him in the boo bag. You can remember the boo bag.
Yeah, drop him in there.
Just take a little sleeping bag. You just nail it to the wall. You just drop the kids in there for hours. Just as long. Yeah, I mean, you could drop some food on the top. Maybe.
Yeah, well, just until they stop crying. They'll learn eventually not to cry.
Mostly from lack of oxygen. Yeah, typical stuff.
Yeah.
Not that I've seen much worse from some of these parenting books. Jesus.
It's free parenting advice for you.
It's not trademark, David. So don't without his name. So.
Make sure you tell the police that I told you to do that.
Yeah, citation, please.
So what are some of your favorite beat 'em ups?
Man, I'd have to say, I really liked Battletoads and Battletoads versus Double Dragons. I'd say that's one of my favorites. I put a lot of time into it, at least. What about you?
Like, if I were gonna list three, which I will, I'd say my number three would be Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, because, like I said, I feel like it takes everything that made River City Ransom fun and puts a lot of nostalgia and really great sprites on it. And the cutscenes in between the levels were just hilarious, right? Because it's got that whole like we're the obnoxious couple vibe with Scott and what's her face? Who's the girl?
Ramona.
Yeah, Scott and Ramona, and then like the two friends who are not in a relationship just kind of glaring on in the background.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah,
because all four of you, it's a 4-player game, right? And all four of you fought to defeat like the boss, and then two of you get a happy ending, and two you're just pissed.
Yeah, standing around. Plus that girl's moody anyway. The drum, or is she the guitarist? I can't remember in the band.
Yeah, I think she's the drummer.
Yeah,
the Sex Bob-Bombs.
Sex Bob-Bombs. Yeah, man, that show was awesome. So what was your other ones?
Next one up is a Super Nintendo game called King of the Dragons. This one we tried to play on our old school emulator day, but we were having issues with connectivity.
Yeah, this is the D&D type one, right? With the cleric.
Yeah, you can be fighter, cleric, wizard, elf, or dwarf.
Elf.
Because those are all classes.
Or speciesist.
I know, super speciesist. But that one's cool because every time you level up, you go, whoa! And everyone around you would just shoot out. So it's one of those, I guess I like beat 'em up games that have an RPG element because you get experience points and gold, and at the end of every level on that one, you get like a new weapon. So you always have the sense of growth. You're like, yes! Like if you're the elf, like you got an arrow with like an extra fletch on it, and the extra fletch made it move faster for whatever reason. Like, more wood resistance. It shoots better.
Some people say that that's like an amalgamation between both an RPG and a beat 'em up. They don't say that that's a pure beat 'em up mechanic. It's like X-Men, Resident Rampage, Battletoads, like any of those games, like not King of Dragons, but a lot of them you don't level up typically.
Yeah,
So
but,
King of
but you
Dragons.
know, you do kind of like River City Rampage. You're getting you have stats and they go up as you
Items.
buy items.
Yeah. Yeah.
But King of the Dragons, like I wouldn't make it a pure RPG because there's no choice in the matter. Like I feel like in an RPG you should be able to choose like what gear you equip, what skills you get. This one is just you kill a lot of dudes, you level up, basically gives you a few more hit points, you fight more dudes.
Huh.
So it's beat 'em up with like RPG elements. But as we said before, put RPG elements onto anything, it becomes better. That's why my favorite first-person shooter is Mass Effect.
Yeah, and also we had a ton of fun with Borderlands too.
Yeah, and BioShock.
Yeah.
RPG elements make everything great, and that's why I like King of the Dragons. And also the wizard, he plays like a second edition D&D wizard where he just sucks for like most of the game. Like he's got crappy little fireballs that shoot out and don't do any damage, and he's super frail and he has no hit points. But if you can survive with the wizard for the whole game, he gets this like staff that shoots lightning and just nukes everybody. He becomes super great. So it has that whole kind of quadratic wizard progression and linear fighter progression.
Right.
And so that'd be my number 2. My number 1 is one I used to play in the arcades and the Super Nintendo a lot. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time.
Oh yeah, that's got to be at the top, man. It's got to be.
Those Mode 7 graphics, throwing foot soldiers into the screen, that blew my mind.
Yeah, sick. Well, that happens in Battletoads too. Like you kick people into the screen sometimes.
Yeah. But the Super Nintendo was like really going nuts with their Mode 7 stuff. So it's like, I don't know, it looked slightly better.
Yeah, it did. And it was just there was so many different things. Like there'd be levels where you're like on a little board, it's like hoverboard type thing.
Or like in the sewer on those little jet bikes.
Yeah, and it just felt different. Like that to me was the most refreshing part. Besides the fact that I was obsessed with Ninja Turtles, I love those different fighting like backdrops sort of.
Oh yeah, like in different time periods, like you fight dinosaurs and futuristic things.
Oh yeah, put dinosaurs in any game, kids love it. We played Sentinels of the Multiverse for our family fun evening thing we do on Mondays, and the kids were like, of course, what environment do you think they want to fight in?
The Savage Lands.
Yeah, the Insula Prime, the Savage Land, the Savage Land ripoff. Of course they did, because they were like dinosaurs. But
holy crap! Yeah, some honorable mentions, and you'll notice the one thing that these all have in common is multiplayer, which we'll talk about later. But I love co-op.
Yeah.
Remember Captain America and the Avengers?
Yeah.
America still needs your help.
And the Avengers! That voice is horrible.
Yeah, I love those. Streets of Rage 2, classic.
Yes.
Knights of the Round Table. Remember Dungeons & Dragons, the arcade games?
Yeah.
Shadows over Mystera, and then there was another one called something Tower. Those were another one where you could be cleric, dwarf, elf, fighter, magic user, and thief. all the classic classes.
Oh yeah. So I'd say my top of all time would have to be probably Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I mean, it's newer, so it's it's more refined. People figure things out. Castle Crashers was also great. That game.
Yeah. That was a great little indie one.
The thing about that one is I played that with people that are just not gamers or hardcore gamers, and I played with like a bunch of different people, like young, old. Everybody seems to like it. Like it's very like approachable. Whereas like something like, let's say you play like Final Fight or something, that's not so good. But also like the Spider-Man game, going back and playing it, I hate it. But like Maximum Carnage back in the day, I loved that.
I was gonna bring that up. Like I loved as a kid playing Separation Anxiety because that was two-player co-op.
That was it.
And so like one of us could be Spider-Man, the other one could be Venom, and they played slightly differently. But
yeah, Venom was like beast.
It's a shitty game. Like it's terrible.
Yeah, it's so bad. I didn't realize that until like 5 years ago when I went back and played it.
Yeah, like if you go back and play it now, it's terrible. But just it had that kind of cool comic style graphics, and it was two-player co-op Spider-Man. Like what more could you want? Plus you team up with Venom. Yeah. What? Awesome.
Yeah, so cool. Which happens in some of the comics.
Same thing with the X-Men arcade game. It's just not a great game, but as a kid I remember loving it.
Yeah, that was my thing too.
What was your character you used to want to be in X-Men?
Nightcrawler. Every time.
Yeah, me too. He had the sweetest mutant power, which is teleport everywhere and kill everything.
He did. Plus, Cyclops was really crappy. His little eye thing wasn't real good. Plus, his fighting was just awkward. He didn't have much range. Wolverine was probably one of the best because he had the biggest range with his claws. But I hated Wolverine. I hated how everyone loved him because I was like, I thought he was okay, but then people would just overhype him, and I was like, he's not that cool, and he's not very loyal to the team. He's kind of a shitbag, to be honest. And people were like, no, the best. So the people would stand in line to be that guy in the arcade, and I was always like, well, I'm gonna be Nightcrawler because he's awesome. And Colossus was okay, but he's slow.
And whose idea was it to put Dazzler as one of the playable X-Men? Like, he's like, well, we gotta put fan favorite Dazzler, and it wouldn't be an X-Men game without Dazzler.
So weird.
She's basically a mutant who only exists because 90s pop had gotten ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or like maybe 80s pop. Like she is the worst. She's worse than Jubilee. Because at least Jubilee knows she's a sidekick. Dazzler was the main character.
Yeah, that's funny how they reinvented Jubilee or Dazzler, I guess, in the new Ultimate storyline. Pretty hilarious.
You have to, because she is the worst.
She is pretty bad. But also, I loved the Double Dragon. I already mentioned that. But gosh, what was another one I just had in my mind? I was like, oh man, that one definitely is up there. What is it besides the Spider-Man series? Oh yeah, Alien vs. Predator. I played that one. That was at a local Walmart that we had. So like my parents would go and they'd shop. My dad would go and he'd shop, and he'd just be like, here's like $5 worth of quarters, and I played this Alien vs. Predator one. Did you ever play that one?
No.
Oh man, it is fun, dude. I didn't know. I knew very little about Predator. My uncle was the worst uncle in the world. I was like 5 or 6, and he let me watch Predator 2. And that's the one where they skin people and hang them up in buildings and stuff. It's pretty bad. But so then from then I was like, well, Predator's awesome. You got no upper limit, when you're a kid. If something's big and bad, you don't know how big and bad it is. So to me, he was the biggest, worst, baddest guy in the world. Like, could he beat up a T-Rex? I'm like, of course he could.
Right.
So like I played the Predator in there. You could play like different people. Like there was a guy that had like a bionic arm with a gun on it, and then they had a girl. I don't remember anything about her. And then they had 2 Predators. One that was like kind of a mage kind of thing, and then there was the fighter one. But I always played the mage guy with the little bow staff. It's so fun. Anyway, that's one of my favorites too. Had a lot of fun with that one. Also very classic, side-scroll beat 'em up. But you remember Streets of Rage? That was another one where you could be like a normal guy, like you could be a big old buff guy with no shirt.
Yeah, that guy was the mayor actually. He was the mayor.
He was the mayor
of Streetsville.
Streetsville, is that what it's called?
Streetsville in Rage County, yeah.
No way. You're kidding, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Dude, you never know with those old games.
Yeah.
But, it could be him, or it could be the cool guy with the hat on who's just awesome.
Yeah, he was average. He was average on everything, right? Like he's the jack of all trades guy.
But the one on the Sega, which one of my friends had, you could play as Axel, like a little kid with a rollerblade.
Skateboard. Yeah. Oh yeah, rollerblades. That's right.
Because rollerblades were awesome back then.
Yeah, like there was the token female who was like fighting evil in hot pants. There was like the muscle-bound brutish guy, and then there was like the average dude, and then there was the kid. Oh, Streets of Rage 2. I remember that.
Yeah, Streets of Rage 2. That was it. Yeah. So, yeah, I played this 2 a lot.
Funny story. That one had the ending music was like this, chip torrent like bit tunes kind of like going through the end credits, and it's like kind of inspiring and kind of like pathetic at the same time. So in college, like my roommates and I, whenever one of us would get back with like from a successful date, and by successful I mean like first base, like we had pretty low bar, but like once we'd come back, we'd be like, so how did it go? And he's like, well, let me just put it this way, and we'd cue up that song, we'd all start dancing around. So it was like the achievement, like, oh great, victory song, but also kind of sad.
Yeah, it's like super pathetic at the same time.
I know, it was perfect for college dating. You have to splice that in so people know what I'm talking about.
All right, yeah, I need to make a note of that then, because I'll never remember. I never seem to. Was it Streets of Rage 2?
Streets of Rage 2 ending theme, yeah. And I want everybody to picture a bunch of college guys just dancing around in the goofiest way possible.
Well, yeah, so Streets of Rage, but it wasn't really that great. But it was kind of just a straight up, punch, kick, and throw people. So it was fun.
And that one had that awesome trope of finding a whole chicken just on the ground and eating it and recovering your health.
That was in a lot of games. Wasn't that in the Dungeons and Dragons one too, or maybe King of Dragons?
Gauntlet was really good at that.
I like how you say "good at that" as if it's like a desirable skill.
Good at being terrible, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but if you guys haven't played Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, dude, that is a fun game. It's up to 4 players, and it's like a little silly and funny, but it's also just legitimately fun if you like those kind of games, which I just really do.
I just realized that Scott Pilgrim doesn't have the random food drops.
Oh, it doesn't. It's got money, which is a weird thing, or like the way that the money drops.
Coins.
Yeah, from the movie. Yeah. So good. Yeah. So co-op's the best part of the beat 'em ups, right?
Yeah. Why is that? Why does co-op make everything better?
Yeah, it just does. It's like it's like going and watching a movie with friends or doing anything else with friends. Like sociality is it's more of a dimension than it is a factor. It doesn't just play and interact with other things so much. It's more of like a whole different. In fancy science language, we call it an orthogonal construct, which is just a really douchey way to say.
It's basically when you go Super Saiyan, all your powers go like times 100.
That's it. Yeah. I'm going orthogonal. I'm gonna say that in our next lab meeting, and no one will get it.
Going.
I'm gonna go orthogonal.
But, power levels were 9,000.
Yeah. But basically, it just means it's like it's on another dimension. So it's like a y-axis. It does its own thing, and it affects the x-axis in so much as it has a relationship with them. But it's not like directly. It's not like minus 2x plus 2x. So anyway, yeah. So what the hell was I talking about? Why is I saying that? Oh yeah, co-op. Yeah. So I think co-op is that way where you can have fun with co-op and it has a relationship with the fun of the game, but it also just kicks it into orbit. It's just fun, man. Sitting with your friends and interacting with each other.
And something about the side-scrolling beat 'em up just lended itself really well to co-op. It's just really easy to implement because the gameplay itself is so simple that you can throw in 2 to 4 players. It's not going to change that much.
Well, let me ask you this: why in the good God hell? That's a term now. I'm gonna trademark that. But why in the crap would you possibly make it so you could hit your friend in those games? Why? How is that helpful?
Oh. Were they thinking oh man, people really want some verisimilitude in this? It needs to be realistic or they won't enjoy it.
Is it?
'Cause that's not the case.
Yeah. No, really. Sell this to me. What? Why in the hell? Let's say you're at a board meeting.
All right, so we're in the boardroom, right? Okay, I'm pitching this. I'm on the design team, and you've got it all nailed down. I'm like, guys, we're missing something here.
You're the guy. No, you're coming in late to the meeting. We're like, okay, so we got this game all wrapped up. You're fighting with friends, There's some bosses. It's gonna be great. Oh, wait, here comes David. David, you have something to add before we close?
Hold up. Has it been printed yet?
No, not yet. We're just about to.
God, thank heaven. There's still time. We need to make it so we can punch each other in the back of the head on accident.
Okay. So, why?
Oh God. Okay, so, man, here's the thing, right? You're fighting some guys and you're having a good time, but what happens if you get hit in the head by one of your friends? You're gonna want to sort that out. There may be an argument. It's gonna be really important for the game.
So that it just adds length to the game. Artificially?
No, it destroys friendships. It's a crucible by which people can find out who the real friends are. This is very important.
Well, David, I'm not going to lie to you. That's the worst idea we've ever had in this boardroom. Why would you want to hit your friends whenever you're just fists are flying and you're back to back and you're going to be near each other because there's only a limited amount of space you can move up and down? I don't understand.
Okay, so when they get hit, they lose life, right?
Yes.
When they lose life, they lose lives, right?
Yeah, that's right.
When they lose enough lives, they have to put more quarters in, right?
Sold. Done. Okay.
yeah, I think we figured it out.
Maybe so, yeah, because Scott Pilgrim was never an arcade game. You're right, and you can't hurt each other. But I like how in Double Dragon, here's how I knew if I was about to beat the shit out of my friend real quick. In Double Dragon, you could play 1 player, 2 player A, 2 player B. If your friend thumb down all 3 times to 2 player B and click the A button, that guy's a fucking bastard. Because that means he wants deliberately it so that he can occasionally hit you.
Do you remember the end of Double Dragon though? You had to fight your brother to the death.
Yeah, I think so. Double Dragon 1, right?
Yeah, it was like a fratricide bonus level. Once you save the girl, she makes you fight your brother to the death, and whoever wins gets her.
Really? I hardly remember.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that transitions nice into my next talking point: sexism.
Right. In beat 'em ups.
Yes, it was the worst for a while.
That was, yeah.
First of all, let's talk costuming. Remember Streets of Rage 2? What was the girl wearing?
Was she the one with the tiny pants and the huge hair? Or the tight pants?
Yeah, tiny tight pants, huge hair, huge chest. Didn't really feel much like a badass.
No, more like a prop.
Also,
every one of those games. Okay, so here's the plot of Double Dragon. You start the game, and you're nowhere on the screen. It's just 2 guys, or maybe it's 3 or 4 guys, and 1 girl. They all walk up, punch the girl in the stomach, put her over her shoulder, and walk off. And that's the intro to the game.
Right. This is one of those things where, yeah, she was literally a prop. She was the football, to be won. She was not a person. She was the trophy.
Yeah. And that was horrible.
And when Anita Sarkeesian talks about sexism in video games, this is where she usually goes, is to beat 'em ups.
Yeah.
But you know where she doesn't go?
Where?
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah, that game. Yeah, that's two of the four characters are girls.
Yeah, and they're just equal. They're all equally great. None of
Yeah.
them are like props or yeah. It's I just hate that she obviously there was a problem in the past, but she never looks at like when we go in the right direction.
Yeah. Like I don't know. I mean, even back then, I think was it Golden Axe, or you could be a girl and she was like a massive, strong girl. Not to say that that's what girls necessarily want, but I'm just saying that that was not the trope of like guys saving girls. Wasn't that right? You could be the female like barbarian type girl.
Yeah,
Golden Axe.
yeah,
I think it was.
but she's in a loincloth. Although with barbarians, everyone's kind of sexualized. Like Conan's pretty sexualized too.
Oh my gosh, I know. Like, have you seen that thing where it's like it shows Barbie and it says like a girl who was kind of boiled down to only the essential sexist elements about her gender, and she's expected to look a certain way and like behave a certain way that was really demeaning to her gender. And it was like that's Barbie. Meanwhile, this is He-Man.
Right.
Like it doesn't even say anything because it's so obvious. Yeah, dude, people get sexualized and it's pretty shitty. Not saying that it's equal. It's just that don't skip over the ones where we also got screwed. Like,
right. Like if you're not a hulking, like if you're not taking steroids and you're high, like you're gonna have some male body image issues. A lot of the way the guys look in those games, but
Oh yeah, I don't know.
You gotta look. You gotta look
familiar
at
with
the
the
picture.
I don't know if everyone's familiar with the literature, but yeah, male body images is exponentially growing. It has been over the last 20 years, exponentially. Like if you've never seen that graph, it looks like a J. It's horrible. Like you never want that in an epidemic. Whereas girls have been on a steady, pretty steady straight, even since like the 30s.
Right.
The idea that like the female body image is new is really stupid, and that like I don't know. There's those ones about like Marilyn Monroe and that she was like a size 32. That's not true. You can go look up like there's a couple historians that have talked about that. Girl historians, female historians. Sorry, I say girl. But they talked about that. They said, no, the sizing is different from today than it was in other days. And the famous picture where there's one where she's a little bit fatter was when she was pregnant, and she asked that not to be published. But she was also very sensitive about that picture. It's weird, this current idea that it's okay to be fat. Not to say that it's not okay. I just mean that the obsession about it.
Yeah, it's a weird. Like I understand like positive self-image and like feeling good about yourself, but when it becomes unhealthy, like when you're I am fatter now than I've ever been in my life, and I look down and say, "Oh man, I'm getting kind of fat." Like I'm not like fat, but I'm fatter than I've ever been.
Right.
I'm starting to see, some love handles cropping in, and I'm like, I should work out. This is not healthy. Like that's my idea. I don't think about like I'm being objectified. I shouldn't be judged by my looks. I just think, well, I just raised my risk of heart disease by a little bit. I should take care of that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a little narcissistic. Not narcissistic. I'm sensitive about my physical looks, so I work out a lot of times just for body sculpting stuff. But I just think so I understand like the sensitivity towards that. I mean, I obviously don't get it as much as girls because I hate when this is a shitty thing about girls. What like a guy walks in, like let's say you walk in and like you saw my two boys. What are you gonna say about them if you see something that's admirable about them?
I don't know. They're cute.
Just anything. Okay. What else?
They're smart. They're well behaved. What do you want?
No. Just there's a breadth of things. My point. There's a few different things, but a lot of people, the first thing out of their mouth about little girls is that they're cute or beautiful, right? Oh, aren't you beautiful in your little dress? That's pretty shitty. Because like I do think that we should be concentrating on other things. You don't want to compliment them for their looks. Yes, that's fine, but it's a side thought. Everyone can look beautiful at some point, but that's not really what makes you a person. So I do think that's pretty crappy that girls get that.
Yeah, girls get that a lot worse than guys, for sure. But it is getting better. Like I said, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, like you're just a bunch of little cute sprites, and some of the sprites are female, some of them are male, but it doesn't make a difference. And you fight ex-boyfriends and a couple ex-girlfriends. You're just one. But it's I think we're going in a better direction, and I feel like we should celebrate that rather than try and repress it, because if you want to make change in an industry, you have to kind of reward the good behavior
Positive
as well as call out the bad.
Yeah. To make any behavior more likely, positive reinforcement has been shown to be much more effective. Like punishment is actually more effective in the short run, but what you do is you lower your propensity to act as a punisher or a reinforcer in the future. Like if every time you get around someone, they're like, "Hey, David, man, I love having you around. You're cool." And then you're like, "Oh, thank you. That's cool." And then over time, if they say that every day, are you more or less likely to be sensitive to the fact if they say like, "Hey, you did that one thing, and I don't really think that's so cool."
Right. If it feels like it's coming from a place of a person that doesn't think I'm like a piece of crap, I'm definitely going to value that opinion more.
So there you go. So if you're constantly like shitting on someone all over them as an industry or whatever, and then they're not really going to care whenever you say, oh, you did it right here, or if you said, oh, you did it wrong again. You're like, yeah, I don't care. Like that happens all the time in marriages. Like people get to the point where they just don't care about what their spouse says anymore. They're like, yeah, she always says I'm a piece of crap, or whatever. Or he always says I'm fat or something.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, so stop doing that. Like you're making it less likely she's gonna listen. Even if you're just a cold-hearted bastard, you're just not being effective right now. Or hopefully they can grow a heart somewhere along the way. But I'm just saying, like even if you're just trying to be a cold-hearted bastard, you need to realize that's not working.
Right, and like I always say on the show, it's about win conditions too. You have to be able to know when you're making progress, or you're not going to know if what you're doing is effective.
Right, and you do that by, just like in science, you state your hypothesis first. You don't do a analysis after the fact. You don't look at all the data and say, yeah, I just did whatever I did, like I made my experiment, just as a general treatment, and then I just made a hypothesis afterwards after I looked at the data. I just kind of shot from the hip. No, you say from the beginning, here's exactly how I'm going to make this experiment so that it will show me whether I am doing this right or whether my hypothesis is correct or not. It's called falsifiability, and it's kind of a big deal for intellectual honesty.
Right. Rather than cherry-picking the data that supports your hypothesis, if I were going to look at the industry and say, are we progressing or regressing or staying the same? As far as sexism goes, I would look at the best-selling games of 2013. I would run through the characters. I would do some analysis on whether they were sexualized, whether there's male or females, whether they are equally represented. I do things like that, and then I would say, okay, this is the state of the industry as of 2013. This is the state of the industry as of 2012. I do the same thing for the 2012 to 2011, however far back I want to go, however much funding I can get, and I would look for general trends and find out, what am I doing? Is it working? Are we going in the right direction? Are we not? What should we change?
Yeah,
if I had a Kickstarter and I was getting a lot of money for discussing sexism in video games, that would be the route I would go.
Yeah, absolutely. That way it'd be intellectually honest. Or you could be a douchebag and just do it, whatever. Now, I'm not. A lot of people start, defending her and saying oh well, she's doing something that needs to be done, and I'm like, yeah, exactly. But anytime you step up and do something, you can either hurt your position or you can help your position. And she's hurting her position actively. She's making a big voice. She's helping in some ways. It's true. But she's also very much hurting ways. And so whenever you speak a certain way, I think we've talked about this on a past episode, but this is psychology here. This is science. When you speak a certain way, there are two different ways to speak. One that's more effective at bolstering your troops. So people that already believe your way will feel
the in-group, so people already in your camp.
Will feel good, but people who have an oppositional opinion or a different opinion will actually solidify, it's called an inoculation effect, but will actually solidify their belief that you're wrong and everything about what you're saying is wrong. That's what she's doing. She's speaking in a way that does that. It's where you don't use a fair evaluation, right? Mm-hmm. That actually bolsters the troops because oh man, yeah, the other side is stupid, and people in politics do this all the time. It really bothers me because oh, Republicans do this, and Democrats are this way, and I'm like, are you sure all Democrats and all Republicans, No, it's not that way. But anyway, whatever. The point is, you could say on average they do this, and that's fine. But because most people don't consider themselves average. But nonetheless, why even bring up that statistic? It's only going to piss the other side off and cement them in their side. Or which one are you trying to do? High five your friends or change other people's minds? And she claims she's trying to make a change in the industry, and so she's doing it all wrong.
And yeah, she's been recognized by some people in the industry. But I think that raising awareness, while important, it's not as important as actually diagnosing and treating the problem. Which I feel like if she was being really fair about it and looking at each year that came out and looking at the general trends, there could still be a problem. There probably still is with sexism in video games, but I'd like to see data. I don't want to see cherry pick in 1983 Donkey Kong came out and that was terrible, or 1981 or whatever, and then just going through all the it's a best hits of misogyny. That's what her video games look like. Her videos look like, and I'm like, I understand there were a lot of bad ones. Can we look at the industry as a whole and just see how we're doing?
Grand Theft Auto 5, I'm like, it's repulsive in general. It laughs at itself and how repulsive it is. I don't even like that game, so I'm not going to sit here and defend it. But I do know its spot in the industry. That's like making fun of South Park and saying oh man, they made fun of Jews. I'm like, well, that's what they are repulsive that way. The actual two creators, Trey and Matt Stone and Trey Parker, they're actually really nice people and they've contributed a lot to a lot of charities. On the other hand, they also see humor as what it is it cracks open, it puts a spotlight on things that other people aren't willing to talk about. And it's also, that's how humor works. Things are funny because it's a novel idea. Nothing's funny. If you tell the same joke 3 times, if the person's heard it 3 times, it's not funny anymore. Jokes are about novelty. So that necessarily dictates that it has to be things that people don't normally joke about. Or it's funnier if they do. So, anyway.
Yeah, it's the Louis C.K. brand of humor, but I don't know, like, we kind of got off on a tangent, but
Yeah.
basically sexism was a huge deal in these games, and I feel like it's getting better, but again, I don't have a lot of data right now. I'm just looking at the newer ones and looking at the older ones and seeing a downward trend of just complete objectification of women.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. But beat 'em ups, they're pretty fun and pretty addictive. Like, did you end up playing a lot? Did you do like marathons of these where you play for like hours at a time?
Yeah, these were like the great slumber party games when we were kids.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or for guys, it was sleepovers.
Oh,
Jeez,
well,
what are you doing?
sorry.
What are you doing here? We don't party. We just sleep over. We over that. That's what we do. But yeah. So one of the things going on there, like, okay, so have you ever? Okay, so I wish I could talk about Bravely Default here too, but I can't. But one of the things they do is they do the sunk cost fallacy, right? Like that's something that's operating on. Like you almost. Okay, so a lot of the games, like you start getting stronger and stronger, and then you put a lot of time into it, so you don't want to just end it on one boss battle, right? You've already sunk a lot of time in there, like this feeling of like sunk cost with the characters.
Especially if it gives you continues, because then you feel like it gives you that countdown, right? That brilliant 9, 10, 9, 8, 7. Because if you don't, press continue, it's like you've lost your one chance.
Yeah.
You'll have to work back up there again. Where if you press continue, you can just start right over.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, as you are going up against the bosses, there's usually a couple of mini bosses and maybe a boss, but there's usually a few different mini bosses and things. You see yourself getting more and more powerful, and then even if you could beat the boss sometimes, you still kind of run around and get even stronger because you've already sunk so much cost. Just defeating a boss isn't really, kind of make that okay, right? So you kind of like, no, I want this, like, I don't know, it's usually like a rare item that I'm trying to get, like unlock, the what was it? In River City Ransom, there was like some hidden store I think too where you could get. I think it was records actually. They do that in Scott Pilgrim, but it's not hidden. But yeah, in Scott Pilgrim, it's paying off the video debts or whatever for
for the rental store, yeah.
And it unlocks like the very best, and you're like, oh yeah, pretty soon the upgrades themselves become the game, not so much the bosses, right? That's the kind of I think a hallmark thing of beat 'em ups is that you're not really concentrating on the plot or beating the bosses so much as you are in like a Final Fantasy game or some other game. You're more concerned about leveling, getting super strong, getting those certain items. The mini game sucks you in, like Final Fantasy Blitzball.
Yeah, on games where that's a mechanic that usually tends to overshadow but that's not only a beat 'em up thing. Like that's kind of what happens in MMOs, right? Like World of Warcraft, you stop worrying about the dungeons and you just worry about the drops. Like it seems like any game where like improving your character is an option, that becomes the game itself after a while.
Yeah, well, yeah, and but there are certain things that make that more likely, and one is like kind of a paucity of anything else, right? So like if you just highlight that and then you lack, like if it got really wrapped up in the story, like I think every beat 'em up story is just laughable for the most part. I can't think of one where I've been like, this is so good.
Jeremiah, the Ninja Turtles travel through time to fight Shredder, so
I know. What the heck? I don't know. And River City Ransom, it's just like, yeah, girlfriend, and then Double Dragon's like, yeah, girlfriend, and then like I don't even know for
Streets of Rage, cleaning up the streets.
Yeah, Streets of Rage, like yeah, clean up the streets in my city. Okay, that makes sense for the mayor, but what about the other dudes? I don't know.
I think they have a community service.
Well, Bad Dudes is more of a platformer, I guess. But anyway, those kind of games, that I think the hallmark of it is everything else falls to the wayside because the fighting like kind of consumes you, especially the ones with an RPG element. But I think the idea is that you've put so much time into it, the bosses need to be epic to really like make sense, And so a lot of them don't do that well. Although nowadays, that's not necessarily true. Like in X-Men, for example, even that's not even a new game, but those bosses were horrible. So, but there's no leveling up. Anyway, okay, so the ones with the RPG elements, at least, it's kind of a sunk cost thing. Like in Scott Pilgrim, you can go and revisit the same worlds and just beat people up for a while, get money, level up. That's like a big part of it that's driving you. But I like how the co-op part is like it's about like, okay, so you're winning like together, with your friends. So there's two parts there. Even if you're playing the game all by yourself, it's still pretty rewarding because you're beating people up. It's a lot of tiny little. Okay, so people like repetition. I should put it this way. We like simple tasks. It's comforting to us because we can automatize it. You can make it automatic, and so it's comforting. You know what to expect. You're not. Anxiety serves a purpose. What?
I was gonna say it's like that's why liturgies take off in religions. They usually develop rituals and liturgies and Hail Marys and memorized prayers. These things are comforting.
Yeah, Exactly, like Hail Marys, exactly. And like, okay, so for example, people with autism, one of the hallmarks of autism, I say hallmarks, I should say instead, one of the symptoms, common symptoms, is like they'll do things like rocking. Have you ever seen like someone with autism or intellectual disability like doing rocking, kind of rock back and forth, or
Oh
count?
yeah, like they rock the house.
Yeah, or they count numbers, or they rub their nose over and over. Like a lot of idiosyncrasies kind of that they do repetitively to
Mm.
comfort themselves whenever they're stressed out. It's
Mm.
because you take something that is very complex and nervous, because whenever something is complex and you have to think about it, anxiety kicks in, because what it does is it cranks up that the activity in our frontal lobes, which is kind of the places where we do reasoning, judgment, thoughts, thinking about the future, weighing in on the more consequences, like a cost risk analysis, that kind of thing. That's all up there. So you get tons of blood flow up there. And so you're more likely to start ruminating. So there's two ways to combat that. Like in therapy, we do it two ways. One is you can get people to cognitively unroute that, right? So just like, say things like, okay, so you're ruminating right now. Instead, let's be mindful. You can do a mindfulness exercise, or you can just talk them out of it, kind of, which is less successful, has a less effect size, but still it's pretty good. Is if you say something like, hey, just concentrate on one thing at a time. Just put one foot in front of the other. That's another, like, you're taking the big job and bringing it down, and that's comforting for people, right? They're less likely to ruminate about that, because like, you don't need to worry about that yet. Is what you're telling me.
Right.
And
Right.
so same thing in these beat 'em ups. It's a ton of tiny little battles with a group, small, either one guy at a time or usually a small group at a time. That you're punching, they fall down, they get back up. You punch them, they fall down, they get back up. It's that kind of thing. It's very repetitive, but it's calming in that way, because it's not. You see, how many times do you see the same freaking enemy in beat 'em ups?
Yeah. Like sometimes with a new color, but the same guy.
Yeah, and there's a very slight variation on them, but that lowers the anxiety in our minds if we can do something repetitive. So people who don't know how to do this cognitively or other ways, a lot of times, people who have autism or intellectual disabilities, they'll do things like that. They'll rock, or like pace. Some people pace, or they try to do things that are engaging their their higher cognitive processes in a way that counting is real popular with people like OCD, or people who are overwhelmed by anxiety, or they think of. Yeah, or playing a video game can calm people down if they do something, like repetitive, But because it makes you do a bunch of small successes, and those small successes sort of kick off the dopamine and our nucleus accumbens, where we say, oh, this feels pretty good because I'm doing something. You feel like you're getting something done, even though you're not. You're just spinning your wheels,
Right.
But if you're spinning your wheels, but you're counting the rotations, suddenly it becomes this, a little mini game, and like it's comforting to you. So the same thing I think in these games is it's easy to just mindlessly just run around and punch things. Sometimes like I'll run right by a shop and continue punching people, and I'm like, oh yeah, I had that shop. I got lost in the mass murder, and you just turn around and go back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why for me these games are ideal with co-op, because they're good games to have conversations with, because you don't have to put a lot of processing power into the game. You can just hang out with your friends and talk while you're beating things up.
Right. And you don't have to consider a lot of possibilities. Like when you play StarCraft on the ladder, how many things are you thinking about weighing in your mind?
Right. That's why if you listen to people play online together, like the conversation's pretty terse. Like, okay, something's happening over there. He's got a barracks up.
Yep.
All right, how you doing? Like very quick, little rapid fire things. But when we're playing Stout Pilgrim, we're just like joking about how Tim's maxed out his glutes from all the squats he does, and just having a good time, laughing, and it's more of a social game.
Yeah, social game, exactly. That's like why those long games are so popular with like frat boys and stuff, or just other people. I mean, I've played long games before, I guess, but it's usually with like bros. But like you do that kind of thing. Something simple, like playing pool, for example, is a good for conversational tool. You want something that's very not taxing and sort of repetitive. So that's what these games are. And then occasionally you do have kind of a boss, that you get a fight where you get to turn on because we also like to think. We like to exercise our higher cognitive process, but only when we choose to, and then that's comforting for us. When we're broadsided it by a lot, it can cause more generalized anxiety, right? Whenever we're like, if you're just sitting in your like library or in your home or something, in your office or your room, and you're just sitting there like chilling, and somebody comes in and goes, hey, quick, our finances, we're at negative $25 in a bank account. We need, and they or throw something like that, or something like hey, whatever's important to you, like your job maybe, hey, so it's $25 just missing from the register. We need to figure it out. Here's the list of people who are working. Here's the list of people who've been fired, or whatever. We don't like being broadsided by that. We like to turn on a cognitive process when we choose to. We're like, I'm gonna watch a movie where I'm gonna think, or whatever it is. So these games are fun that way because it's coming. You can engage the bosses typically whenever you want to. It's completely moved by you. It's not like they just drop in on you very often. So. it's very comforting that way, these games, and very able to engage with other people. And whenever you do tasks together, there's a higher reward system or a higher amount of dopamine released in the reward center whenever you do a fun thing with a friend. So like in groups
makes
where
sense. We're social animals. We should be kind of selected for enjoying overcoming obstacles together.
Yeah. And that's basically what happened. So that's why I was saying like winning together. It's like a double kick. It's a double kick in
dragon.
A double dragon, yeah. Because also you want to see people, you want to have people around during your victories, and you also it's comforting if you don't do so well and your friend kind of supports you, in whatever way, whether it's coming running to your aid and helping you, or if it's like oh that's okay I got this or whatever. We like that, It's why playing 2v2 on the ladder in StarCraft, for example, is more comforting than playing 1v1, because you can drop some of your losses on the team, and also, or sometimes just solely on your teammate, and say
right.
like, no, I would have won it if it wasn't for him. And so you don't constantly. The default isn't to blame yourself.
And there's this natural inclination to want to help your friends, right? Like when we were playing Scott Pilgrim, I was what's her face? Ramona, and you were Scott, and we were kind of getting our butts kicked because in that game, if you fall down, your friend can revive you, but he needs to be uninterrupted for a few seconds. And so we were just getting killed sometimes with the bosses. And Tim was watching us kind of on his computer and watching at the same time, but he wasn't that invested. But as we kept losing, he got more and more invested. He started shouting advice. And we're like, Tim, just pick up a controller, man. We could use your help. And he jumps in there, and then he's fully on board, right? Because he wants to help his friends. It's like a natural inclination.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's the thing about pro-sociality. It's kind of I'd say a downward spiral, but it's not really true. It's an upward spiral. So some people used to say this was a hypothesis about like violent media. People thought that you become more violent when you watch violent media and partake in it, and then you are more then that in turn will make you more likely to partake of violent media, and then that will in turn, you see how it's like a downward spiral.
Right.
As it turns out, there's not much evidence for that, if any, but pro-sociality, there is good evidence that that's an upward spiral. So what happens is, let's say you go to your first, like you and I used to do service projects in the Mormon church, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you go do this, and how did you feel afterwards? Not on a stupid one where it was like some guy wasn't, well, even that, but let's use a clear example. Like, did you ever help anyone that really needed it?
Yeah, like helping like an old lady like mow her yard and clear out some brush or something.
Yeah, and let's say that happened, and you got a chance to like talk to her afterwards or whatever. She thanked you. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, you feel good. You're like, yeah, doing some good stuff, serving my fellow man.
Right. And how did you feel about maybe doing that again in the future? More or less likely?
Like, way more likely than I felt the morning of. Like, when you first get there, you're like, right. Oh, man, my whole Saturday's going to be spent doing this.
Right. And so you get these people, actually, who become quite, I'm not going to use the word addicted, but you get these people who end up getting into these upward spirals where they really get caught into it, where they volunteer a ton, and they love the way it makes them feel, and they love doing it, and they're more likely to do it.
Selfish bastards.
Yeah, and because you do that thing more, you start, it makes it, it's called an establishing operation of behaviors, and basically it makes it more likely that it's going to be reinforcing to you, because like if I do something that means nothing to me, like if someone's like, help me with my, I don't know, chemistry project, and I don't know what any of the chemicals are, and I mix them together, and they're like, oh, look at that, the phenylthymine or whatever went up, and I'm like, that means nothing to me, I don't really care. But when it means more to me, like if it's something like, oh, this is my grandma and she needs a lot of help or whatever, and I understand the concepts and I understand the interplay and I understand the gravity of it, then it makes the success more reinforcing, right? Mm-hmm. And so the more we do something, like the more I play basketball, the more I start to think it's a worthwhile thing to do, right? Because of cognitive dissonance, or also because behavioral inertia, right? But and then that makes it. Yes, that makes it more reinforcing whenever I succeed at it. So it's like a kind of a spiral that way, and it's upward spiral that way with pro-sociality too. So in this game, whenever you help each other out and you play with each other, the kind of the payback, the little happiness we get goes up a little, and your friend is more likely to help you if you help them up, and then see how this starts getting into an upward spiral where you're more likely to help each other. Both, you're more likely to help each other out, and which becomes more reinforcing, which makes it more likely you're going to help each other out. And pretty soon you can get where you're just like kind of sticking around each other just to make sure the other person doesn't die. So it's an upward spiral, and it's really good. And as far as like
the bronies were right, like the friendship is magic.
It is. Friendship is magic. And payback is one of these things that we know really well through psychology and neuroscience. It's like it's so deep in our DNA. There's like the social rewards of the physical and psychological kind of rewards of social kind of payback of doing something nice for someone. It's like inherent. It's something that everyone has, and it's pretty innate to our nature. Because like you said, we're a social species. We have been. It's in our genes. We've been that way for just millennia. So
yeah.
Anyway, so I think that's one of these things. It's kind of tap into that primal nature of the rewards. Yeah.
It's why you can have a game that's like objectively simplistic and not that great. Like punch things, they stand up. Punch things, they stand up. Fight enemies that all look the same. No variation. Like even the worst beat 'em up is a lot of fun with friends.
Yeah.
Beat 'em ups are like pizza, right? Like even bad pizza is still kind of good.
right. Because it's a funny mix of texture and then like kind of savoriness. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Fat, grease, and carbs, man. We love it.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing. It's like these rudimentary elements that appeal to our base psyche, like our base DNA. So even if they're badly put together, like what's the worst beat 'em up like you played? Like maybe like X-Men: Children of the Atom or something, where it's just objectively, or the Spider-Man and Venom one. Like it's just objectively not a good game, but we still have great memories playing it because we're
but if you came over and you turned it on and were like, do you want to grab a controller? I would grab a controller.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of magic to that. There's some kind of the ability to take a crappy game and still have fun. Like it really speaks volumes to our whole social species like heritage of loving to accomplish things together.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about like a party or like anything like that, a lot of that stuff is pretty shitty. You're just standing around or sitting, or whatever. But it's more fun because you do it in groups, and it just taps into something we need, and that's why like one of the biggest parts of behavior therapy for the behavior therapy approach to treating depression is to get them to go out and do things often with people or around people, because it reacts on such a level, or we react on such a primal level that there's not people who are like, I'm not social. I'm like, bullshit. We all are in our genes. You just don't understand yourself, because that's just true. You have these places fire off. The only thing that's getting in the way is your anxiety or your discomfort is usually how they say it. I use anxiety as a clinical term, but as a colloquial term, I would say I'm uncomfortable, right? But the way that operates, I could show you on a psychological and a neural level that you're getting the benefit. You're just getting a lot more negative, which is not the social part's fault, or it's no unwiring of yourself. It's just an interpretation problem of your own problem, which I can fix easily in psychology. Like social anxiety, that's one of those things when someone comes in like, sweet, I got you fixed in 6 weeks. Like we love those. We love those. We love phobias. We love OCD. We love panic attacks. What else? There's a lot of real simple ones. Like depression.
Yeah, and I've played games with like huge introverts. Our friend Tim, he's not much of a social butterfly. He likes to be just on his own a lot, but some of our earliest memories playing King of the Dragons with that guy and just having a blast, because it really, like, everybody can tap into that kind of working together to slay the dragon mentality.
And
slay the woolly mammoth.
And look in D&D and in this game, Scott Pilgrim, when we played that together, he was like one of the quickest to get over to us and start, even at his own detriment, like even his great detriment, to start trying to revive us. Mm-hmm. You have the sociality. It's just people who typically call themselves introverts, they have a smaller group of friends that are tighter, and the reason why that is because they feel that they can trust those people more with who they are, whereas like people who consider themselves, quote unquote extroverts, are people who are more comfortable showing everyone their selves, and they don't really feel apprehensive about kind of being whoever they want to be around other people. So whenever people say that, it's just a misunderstanding of themselves. But whatever. I won't get into that, but prosociality, that seemed like it was a relevant topic to talk about as far as like how that works, the social environment, and the idea that like some people aren't social. That's not true. Far from it. Or no, okay.
Some people
as a snapshot, they're less social. Yeah, but
some people have like more barriers. Like underneath, they're social, but they have more things to work through before they feel like the reward becomes worth it.
Yeah, so it'd be like, let's say I give you a chocolate, and I'm like, here you go, and you eat it, and you're like, that's delicious. And then if I gave someone like them a chocolate, I gave them a chocolate, but I said, oh, I dropped it in dog poop, and I was like, oh, gross. And then I picked it up, and then I sanitized it, like I cleaned it off and sanitized it, did everything, so there's absolutely no chance that it's going to get to them. But then I put it in their mouth. It's their interpretation that screws with it, and they're going to think they don't like it because there's parts of your brain that fire off whenever you describe something as disgusting or aversive. It's your ACC part of your brain, so it fires off and it overwhelms your reward center. So you think that you don't like it. You're like, I don't like that. If that's let's say it wasn't chocolate. Let's say I called it Bloomberfarn, and I gave it to him. I said, this is Bloomberfarn. He tastes it, and he's like, oh god, I don't want to ever taste that again. It was his interpretation that destroyed that, not the actual any property of the chocolate itself, which is naturally rewarding to him. And then they say things like, "Oh, I'm just not a chocolate eater. Get off me. I'm an introvert." And I'm like, "That's not how it works. Actually, it's your interpretation. Our interpretation part of our brain is very, very powerful, and people really undercut it a lot. Like, that's just how I am, and you can't change it." I'm like, "You absolutely can change it. It's very simple. It's called cognitive restructuring, and it's the basis of a lot of CBT." But anyway, whatever.
For sure.
I'm off on a tangent now, but I get on these little rants. It's good radio. It's good radio.
Yeah, good times. Good times. So yeah, that's about all I had to bring to the table for beat 'em ups. It's just a simple genre that I've always wondered, why do we love it so much when there's nothing to it? Like, you're basically just like, you've got one of those like rubber clowns that you hit and they fall down, then come back up, and you're just doing that over and over again. You're like, this is the most fun I've ever had because my friend's doing it with me.
Yeah. Well, hopefully something of what we said helped, elucidate that whole mystery, because it is pretty weird that so many people like it and it sells so well. But yeah. So I guess that's all I really have to say too about it, without getting too nerdy and in depth. Maybe some other time we can get more in depth about it, but psychologically, that's a good superficial idea of what's going on.
Great. So, should we move on to our feedback?
Let's do it. All right, this is the feedback section. So I checked our iTunes reviews, and we don't have any new ones, which I think is weird because we had such a big bump in listeners.
Yeah, but not the great kind of listeners who leave us 5-star reviews on iTunes or Stitcher.
Well, I understand. Like, I mean, how many? Maybe you're a better person than I am, but how many reviews have you left on iTunes?
Like 4 out of like the 20 podcasts I have.
Yeah, I've left 1. Yeah, so I understand, but if you guys get a chance, we really appreciate jumping in there and putting on there, because there's a whole algorithm, and I don't know what it is, and I don't think anybody does besides Apple workers. But
I think he took it to the grave with him, Steve was, or Steve Jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, he probably did. But whatever it is, those likes somehow puts us closer on the page. Like, so for some time we were on the front page of like gaming podcasts in general. Like, it was a big deal because a lot of people liked us and left reviews.
See, there's an old Game Theory podcast that they put out 20 episodes and then just disappeared like a year ago. Yeah. And they're still the first thing to pop up when people look for Game Theory podcasts, and I feel like a lot of our listeners might be getting lost there.
Yeah.
So give us those reviews. Help us. We've already got like 12. They have 0 reviews, so we have 50 times as many reviews as they do, but give us more. Like, we're going to have to dethrone those people so we can actually get people who are looking for us to find us.
Yeah, I sent an email to like some of the iTunes, gods or whatever, but I don't say. I was like, "Will you pull them? They've been gone for a year. They said they were done. Would you kind of pull them?" Because I don't know why they come up first, because we have way more reviews and way more episodes and way more popularity, but there's a stack of popularity. I'm not just subjectively saying that, but yeah. I don't know. So yeah, please help us out. That'd be great. Did we get any emails this week? We got 2 last week.
Yeah, I got a review from your mom. She says you're the worst. So
that's horrible.
No, we don't. We didn't get any new emails. So if you want to email us, check us out at thegametheorypodcast@gmail.com. You can send us any comments or questions if you disagree with us. People have called us out before. We tend to speak in somewhat polarizing views sometimes. For example, Anita Sarkeesian, kind of a polarizing figure. So tell us why we're wrong about her if you think we are.
Yes, and if you have any questions about like anything David said or anything I've said, fire off an email. We've even got some that were like, how do I raise my kid in this specific example? Because sometimes I focus on kids because it's easier, more clear cut. But yeah, anything, literally anything. We'll answer it. We love the feedback, and we've been really good. Our listeners have been really good about sending it in, so we appreciate it. Yeah. So what about the Facebook page? Didn't we have a poll, or was that? No, someone randomly put up a poll that wasn't us.
Yeah, somebody, and which is fine. Somebody randomly
awesome.
wanted to know if Sub-Zero or Scorpion was the cooler Mortal Kombat character. So far, I voted for Sub-Zero.
Okay.
Not just because he's cooler, literally, but I just like ice powers. I think that's a fun power to have. Bobby Drake, Iceman.
Yeah, I voted for Scorpion because I didn't know how to answer the question. Were they asking like, on a normal curve of people, which one's cooler, or what is my personal opinion?
I just went with which one is more interesting to me.
Yeah, I would have put
which one has a more interesting story.
But I felt like it was being misrepresented, so I voted Scorpion just to bring it back to normalcy. I don't know if that makes me a stats nerd or something, but Yeah, I think Sub-Zero's pretty cool, but Scorpion, I mean, he's just, if he wasn't so broed out right now, I think he was a cool character in the beginning. Like, he's this guy who went to hell and is trying to redeem himself. That's pretty fun.
Yeah,
But Sub-Zero's got the cool
I never get excited about the Crow kind of like I died and came back for vengeance story. Like that's just so played out for me. Whereas, freezing somebody and punching them and they shatter into ice cubes, that's awesome.
That is pretty awesome.
But anyway, right? One of the listeners actually had an interesting theory because right now Sub-Zero is killing Scorpion in the who's the better character poll, and his theory was, and I don't know if this is just one of those like just so stories, but he says that when the weather's really hot, people like Sub-Zero better, but when the weather's really cold, people like Scorpion better because you kind of like want what you don't have.
Huh.
So probably coincidence, but it's kind of a fun thing to think about. We'll have to ask that question again in the winter and see if people still like Sub-Zero.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I wouldn't doubt it though. I mean, there's a lot of subtle, like, I don't know what the effect size would be, but there's a lot of subtle things like that. Like, people are more likely to do a lot of things after tiny little things like that, especially like weather. Like weather and temperature have been linked to a lot of.
Oh yeah, or like if the local sports team loses the game, like and there's an election the next day, the incumbent will like take a huge like 5-point loss, I think, in the polls. So we do a lot of things without knowing what's influencing us. So there may be something to that.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah.
But so, yeah, if you want to join our Facebook group, that's Game Theory Podcast Facebook group. You can type facebook.com/group/Game Theory Podcast to find us.
Yep, and groups is plural. Groups.
Right.
Game Theory Podcast. Also, you can come check us out on Twitter, which is twitter.com/Game Theory Pod. And I post some things from time to time. Usually, a lot of it's been like science stuff recently, but yeah, a lot of times, sometimes I just post gaming related stuff or just like a little commentary. But yeah, so come follow us there. We've gotten a lot of followers recently, I think probably because of our bump in numbers. So yeah, come check us out. It's pretty fun. I don't post a lot, but when I do, hopefully it's entertaining. So I think that's it on feedback, right?
Yeah.
So
next episode.
You are going to be nowhere. You're going to be off the grid, right?
Yeah, I'm going off the grid for a while. I'll be back late Sunday night, so the good money is I won't make it to the podcast next week.
Okay. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to put together something either with, I know a guy who knows a lot about fear in media.
The Scarecrow, yeah. Oh, no, yeah.
Scarecrow, yes. Jeremiah Arkham, I believe is his name. Yeah. Not him, but so hopefully if I can get him on scheduled, that would be great. Or maybe I could think of something else, something like psychology heavy maybe, so that you don't have to weigh in on anything else. And or maybe I'll bring on a guest episode with my wife again. I don't know. I'm gonna try to figure something out. But worst comes to worst, I guess if I can't work anything out with anyone and I'm not clever enough to think of a topic, then I guess why not have one? I don't know.
Right.
That would be worst case scenario.
Yeah, and a first for no pressure, but we're almost to 50 episodes without missing a week.
That's true. Yeah, I don't want to ruin that. So, okay, well, we'll figure out something. But thanks for hanging out with us for another episode. I hope you guys find something in there interesting or worthwhile to talk about on the Facebook page or in our interactions, because that's really, I think, a big part of the fun is having people kind of weigh in and tell their thoughts on things and hearing what people are thinking about current events and past events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So. And in the meantime, go grab a buddy, grab your wife, grab a husband, grab a loved one, and play a beat 'em up. It really strengthens friendships.
Yeah, you can. Don't turn on the hurt my friend thing.
that destroys friendships.
Yeah. Well, I guess then, until the mystery episode where I don't know what's going to happen, I guess this wraps this episode up. Thanks for hanging out with us. I've been Jeremiah.
And I am David.
And this has been the Game Theory Podcast.